Good afternoon. Well, spring has sprung, huh? I was, last week, some of you know my main home is in Denver, and Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, it was 82 degrees. On Thursday it snowed, on Friday it snowed, and my wife and I flew to San Francisco and had a nice dinner, some good weather. When Sunday we went to Kona, and that was amazing weather. And I flew back this morning and landed in Seattle and went, oh, I'm home. Felt right at home. Thank you all for joining us for our spring 2024 board meeting. Just a reminder, this meeting will be recorded and shared with the board. I would like to open the meeting with a land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the waters of all tribes and bands within the Squamish and Tulalip and Muckleshoot nations. Through this acknowledgement, we also recognize and respect the sovereignty of these nations and their people who are thriving today. In terms of an agenda, in today's meeting, we will conduct board business, discuss UW business, hear from students from the College of Engineering. Lynn Grinstein will lead us in a moment to celebrate Nancy Evans' legacy of service. We'll hear from students from the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance, and hear from President Kause during Insider's Corner. It's always one of my favorite parts of these meetings. And we start with a warm welcome to our invited guests who are joining us, faculty and students from the College of Engineering and the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance. Let me also remind you that immediately following our meeting, we will move upstairs to the South Ballroom for cocktail hour and dinner. During the cocktail hour, we'll have a showcase for our student presenters and researchers talking about the impact of climate on human health and the environment. While we were prepared to celebrate the life and the impact of UW Foundation Board Director Nancy Evans today, we will do so later in this meeting. I'm sad to also share that I just learned the passing of Don Peterson. Literally, as I left the airport, I got a note. Don helped establish the UW Foundation and served as the board's first chair. For those of you who did not know Don, he earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the UW in 1946. Following Marine Corps service and a Stanford MBA, Don joined the Ford Motor Company, where he spent his career, retiring as president and CEO. Don was an authentic leader and a devoted Husky. Along with Jerry Grinstein and John Nordstrom, Don led the university's first campaign. A UW Foundation Board Director for life, Don's service to the university was recognized when he received the Gates Volunteer Service Award, the UW Recognition Award, the College of Engineering Diamond Award, and the university's highest honor, the Alumnus Summa Laude Dignus. And I apologize for butchering that. It was a late-breaking addition to my script. Please join me in the moment of silence in honor of Don Peterson, who established the foundation we proudly serve today. Thank you. I'm pleased to share that the Recognition Committee, which includes the Gates Volunteer Service Award Subcommittee, led by co-chairs Molly Nordstrom and Brooke Simpson, have met, deliberated, and selected the GVSA recipient for 2024. This year's recipients are Clyde and Sherelle Walker. Clyde has a medical procedure and is not here with us today, but Sherelle is. Yeah. I was so so very pleased to make the call to Clyde. Sherelle happened to be out when I called. When I called to inform him of the award. It's the only time I can ever remember Clyde being speechless. Thank you.
One more time.
We look forward to the formal presentation of this award at the Founders Recognition Gala on September 13th, and I hope you'll all be able to join us. Okay, on to campus happenings. Well, we're embarking on the next journey in the future of athletics here at the UW. We've got two great new leaders. Pat Chun, Director of Athletics, is our new athletic director. Pat's got a track record of success and a wealth of experience, invaluable as we enter the Big Ten. As some of you know, he spent a big chunk of his assistant athletic director career at the Ohio State University, so he's familiar with the Big Ten. And he wasn't too far away when we found him. Much chagrin, my wife and my brother are Cougars, although my wife doesn't like it when I call her a Cougar. But they were kidding me about us having to come get talent from them. And I said, that's okay. He is highly respected at the national level, which will serve us well as we shape the future of collegiate athletics. Pat knows our state and is committed to our values, including the support of the whole student athlete. And we're in an interesting time now where college athletics feels so professional on every level. So keeping that sense of the importance of the student athlete is sort of top shelf, number one issue for us here at the University of Washington, and we're going to cling to that as hard as anybody. Also, Coach Sprinkle is our new head men's basketball coach. Comes to us from Utah State, as you know. His dad played on the UW football team in the 1960s, so he certainly has a tie, family and otherwise, to the area. And I was so pleased to see how he spoke about the opportunity to come to the university as sort of coming home. So looking forward to, obviously, strong career, wouldn't be here otherwise. If you look at what he's done at his previous assignments, he's always taken those programs to the next level. So I have really high hopes, and I'm sure you do as well. Moving on, welcome Becca Kelly. She is the permanent, I'm welcoming her and congratulating her on her permanent appointment as Chief Advancement Officer for the UW Medicine and and she's also the UW Vice President for, Advancement Officer for UW Medicine and the UW Vice President for Medical Affairs. Is Becca here? Is Becca in the room? Could you stand? Daniel James Brown will deliver the commencement remarks for the Seattle campus on June 8th. Now, to be clear, there are a couple of Daniel Brown authors, okay? I just want to make sure you know this is the Daniel Brown from who's the author of The Boys in the Boat. Our Daniel, Daniel James Brown. He will also receive an honorary degree for his scholarship in the humanities. MIT atmospheric chemist Susan Solomon will also be recognized at commencement for her pioneering research on ozone depletion and the chemistry of the stratosphere. We look forward to announcing the commencement speakers for the UW Bothell and UW Tacoma in the coming weeks. The 2024 Husky 100 were announced last month. The Husky 100 are undergraduates and graduate students who are recognized for their leadership, creativity, and service, and whose student experiences are seen as models for what is possible through a UW education. They have founded startups, created artwork, served as mentors, conducted research, and advocated for social justice. They are leaders and innovators on our 3 campuses and in our communities. You can meet some of them at many of the spring events listed in your ebook. And now on to board business. Congratulations to Dixie Wilson, who was recently awarded the UW Medicine's 2024 Reagan Volunteer Service Award. Dixie, can you stand up for a second? The award recognizes volunteers, faculty, or staff whose service advances the mission of UW Medicine. For more than 20 years, Dixie has advocated for UW Medicine research and clinical care and provided counsel for fundraising initiatives to UW Medicine faculty and development staff. She served on the last UW Medicine Campaign Initiatives Committee and is currently serving as the UW Medicine representative of this board. She has recently partnered with the Sports Institute to raise the support for the Husky Fellowship Program, which connects her passion for medicine and athletics. Congrats. Also, congratulations to Corinne Wright, past chair and UW volunteer extraordinaire. Corinne's received the Dorothy Stimson Bullitt Community Service Award by the Junior League of Seattle. Stimson Bullitt was a founding member of the Junior League of Seattle, a civic leader, a women's advocate, and the founder of the King Broadcasting Company. This award recognizes extraordinary volunteer public service, and we all know that because we've gotten to spend so much time with Corinne over the years. So, congratulations. Moving on to the consent agenda. As a reminder, our voting procedures occur online with our platform, Board Effect. All at-large, representative, directors for life, and ex officio directors have full voting rights, so if you see a notification from Board Effect asking for you to vote, please do so. The consent agenda, which included the January board meeting minutes and election slate, was sent to the board on Thursday, April 18th via Board Effect. Thank you for everyone who submitted their vote. We received a quorum for the board, so the consent agenda has been approved. Now I'd like to welcome new directors to the Foundation Board, and I'd ask that you stand and wave when I call your name. Lori Cañate, is she here? Okay. Is the representative director of KUOW. Charlie Carter, representative director, Arts and Sciences. And I know this one's in the room. Becca Kelly, ex officio director and vice president of medical affairs. The membership committee, under the leadership of Dave Franke and Sarah Moisman, is hard at work recruiting next year's at-large director class. We are always accepting recommendations for community leaders interested in board service at the UW. So please reach out to Dave. Dave, can you wave or stand up? Yeah. And Sarah. Please reach out to Dave, Sarah, or Lou. And where's Lou? Yeah, back there. If you have recommendations or nominations. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Heidi Shepard, who recently joined the Foundation Board Engagement Team, reporting to Lou Hine. A large part of Heidi's role is board communications. so you will frequently hear from her. Welcome, Heidi. Heidi, where are you? All right, moving on. I'm going to call on Sanjay Cheetah to give us the treasurer's report.
Good afternoon. In your ebook meeting materials, you will find the Foundation Board's Form 990. And as a 501c3 organization, the UW Foundation is required to file Form 990 with the IRS annually. Our partners at KPMG prepared the 2022 Form 990, and as one of our delegated responsibilities, the Foundation Board Executive Committee reviewed and approved the 990 when they last met on March 22nd, and it has been filed with the IRS. The 990 was subsequently emailed to the whole board on March 27th and is included, as I said, in your meeting materials. So here are the highlights. Total contributions and grants to the UW Foundation were $177 million per audited financial statements, $751,000 of which was used for foundation expenses. The remaining $176 million, line 12 on the return, is revenue for tax purposes. Now this amount forms part of the larger total contributions to the UW, which total more than $600 million annually. The $161,000 deficit shown on line 19 is the result of timing differences of grant receivables accrued in fiscal year 2022 that were expended in fiscal year 2023. Note that the vast majority of unrestricted giving to the UW is distributed to units across our campuses, including the President's Fund for Emerging Priorities. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
And next up, we're going to get an update on Husky Giving Day. And for that update, I'd like to ask our friend Dan Hugh Weller to come on up and give us the good news.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much, Ken. It's great to be back with this group. Hugh and I just came from the UW bookstore, our pilgrimage that we make every time we come to campus. And for those of you who were worried that we were going to enter our names in the spring portal, the transfer portal, the answer is no. And we used our NIL dollars to get these nice sunglasses and hat and to go to the bookstore and make a trip. I'm going to share three things with you. One's an opportunity. Two is an update on UW Impact that we talked about last time. And finally, I'm going to wrap with Husky Giving Day results. So the first is about that bookstore. I don't know how many of you who comment on my UW style and how much logo wear that I have want some tips. But at the UW bookstore, there's something really special. For those times that you get tired of your Adidas sweater with the embroidered W on the left part of your chest, you should know that the UW bookstore now has an exclusive partnership with Lululemon, and you can have your black long sleeve Lululemon jacket with the embroidered W on the right chest. So go down there. You can't get it at the Bellevue Lulu. You can't get it at University Village. You can't even get it at the Lululemon headquarters in Vancouver, BC, but you can get it at our very own University bookstore. So head on down there. Sorry, Lou. I know, 3 minutes. Secondly, just a quick thank you from Courtney Acitelli for your support of UW Impact during this 60-day legislative session. It was an incredibly successful session for our university, and I'd like to acknowledge Randy Hodgins and Joe Daca for their incredible efforts in securing some funding for us on priorities that were very important to this university. So thank you so much, Randy and Joe. Third and finally, I know a lot of you have asked me about the Husky Giving Day results. And I'm pleased to report that together, on Husky Giving Day, you helped the university raise more than $1.9 million over 4,480 gifts. So give yourselves a round of applause. This group did $92,000 of that $1.9 million, which was just another day. This was not about our group giving a ton of money. This was about us getting new donors, and there were 1,000 new donors, first-time donors that are what we call golds, or graduates of the last decade. So that's incredibly important. That 92,000 was just another day, like I said, for this group. And if you multiply that by 365, I thought that'll be some ridiculous number that this group probably didn't do. It's $33.5 million. And I was like, we're probably closer to that than to $92,000 annually. So we appreciate you, not just on Husky Giving Day, but on every day of the year. Thank you so much. And I would like to say that as leaders, our job is not just to act, it's not just to inspire others to act, but it's also to thank them when they do. And to that end, I'm going to be personally calling some of those graduates of the last decade who gave for the first time. And I want them to know that not just other students are impacted, but that we on the foundation board appreciate what they're doing, and we want to encourage them in this first step on their philanthropic journey for the UW. And I would like to ask for a show of hands if you as a foundation board member are willing to make some calls or write some notes to those graduates of the last decade who started their philanthropic journey this year. Hands up. All right. So we've got you just got your picture taken, and Lou is going to go through and do facial recognition, but thank you so much. And we need to extend that thanks to those new donors and encourage them along their way so they become not just one-time donors, but lifetime donors to the UW. Congratulations to Jennifer McCormick and Susan Hayes McQueen for leading the Husky Giving Day effort, and thank you so much for your attention and your generosity.
Okay, next up, we have the opportunity here from the Board of Regents report. So Dave Zeke is here, and Dave, come on up.
The worst spot on any agenda at the University of Washington is to follow Daniel Hugh Weller. So I've got my UW pin, but that's the best I can do, Dan. No, well, never mind. I'm not going to go the rest of the way. My name is Dave Zeke. I'm chair of the board this year, and I bring you greetings from the board, and thank you for allowing me some time to share a few thoughts with you, including the outcomes of our legislative efforts, which Dan mentioned. Many of you participate in those efforts through UW Impact and in other ways as ambassadors. So on behalf of the Regents and the university, I wanted to thank you for that effort. It is critically important to all that we do. This year was a significant one for stabilizing and expanding one of the most important parts of the UW enterprise, UW Medicine and Health Sciences more broadly. That's our commitment to health and well-being of all people in this region. A few of the highlights on the medicine side: we got $2.5 million in ongoing operational funds to expand the School of Dentistry's Regional Initiatives in Dental Education, or RIDE program, which trains dentists to serve the rural and underserved populations of Washington. We also got 3 essential investments in critical health care. The first of them, a $60 million one-time stabilization investment for UW Medical Center and Harborview Medical Center to support critical safety net care and medical training missions for the state. This is a step forward toward direct government funding of UW Medicine's safety net function. The approximately $800 million in un- or undercompensated care that UW Medicine provides each year to people in the state of Washington. The next and crucial step is to secure significant ongoing operational funding for that safety net care. Your outreach and advocacy will be welcome and crucial in that effort. Another medical investment was $20 million for the Center for Behavioral Health and Learning. formerly known as Behavioral Health Teaching Facility at UW Medical Center Northwest for operations. This is in addition to $244 million the legislature invested to build that facility. The new center will include 3 inpatient units with 25 geriatric psychiatric beds, 50 medical surgical beds, and 75 long-term commitment beds, as well as outpatient services. The celebratory ribbon-cutting ceremony will be on May 15th, during which Governor Inslee, State Representative Frank Chop, who did so much for that effort over so many years, State Senator Manka Dhingra, as well as President Kelsay and UW Medicine leadership will speak. Private philanthropy will also help recruit strong faculty and program leaders, train the next generation of mental health professionals, and advance innovative clinical programs such as the Garvey Institute Center for Neuromodulation, a new outpatient clinic located within the Center for Behavioral Health and Learning that offers state-of-the-art treatments. Assuring ongoing reimbursement at cost for care provided at the center will be necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of this partnership to advance behavioral health care across the state and beyond. And lastly, on the medical side, we received $5 million for Harborview Medical Center for design costs for the Behavioral Health Institute building and Pioneer Square Behavioral Health Clinic. Additional capital investments that we received outside of medicine directly include $5 million to design the modernization of the chemical sciences and renovation of Bagley Hall. The renewal of this building is critical to meet course demand and increase degree production, improve interdisciplinary learning, attract and retain world-class faculty, increase grant funding for cutting-edge research, and strengthening relationships with industry partners. Also, the College of Arts and Sciences is preparing to raise $20 million for the next phase of this particular project. In addition to that, we received $38.9 million for energy renewal and decarbonization projects on all 3 UW campuses and across the medical system. Part of being a leader, of course, in environmental sustainability and justice is doing our part to reduce our own emissions. And we appreciate that this is part of UW's larger work around actions for a healthier planet and people. I do have to say that some of this funding is threatened by the potential repeal of the Climate Commitment Act, which is on the ballot later this year. So not to be too political, but make sure that doesn't pass. In addition, we received $2.58 million to renovate the UW soccer practice field for the 2026 World Cup, some matches of which will be held here. We're looking forward to the coming biennium. In that period, the university will seek increased governmental support for faculty and staff compensation, for permanent funding for safety net medical care, and further contributions to campus decarbonization. I want to second what Dan said about the UW State Relations Office and UW Medicine Government Relations team, who provide continuing support for a strong relationship between UW and the Washington legislature, and who help to make the case for these vital investments. I also want to again thank the many volunteers of UW Impact, led by Courtney Acitelli, and all their work on behalf of the UW. It's phenomenally important to have ordinary citizens who benefited from their education at the UW go down and lobby in person. The Board of Regents appreciates the efforts of this board and of our advancement team to plan for the next campaign, and the generosity of all of you in service to this university. This is a difficult time for higher education, as we see on the news every day, but it also continues to be an extraordinary time for the UW. As our high application rates, our rankings, our research achievements, and more demonstrate every day, the UW's work and values are connecting with a new generation of students. It isn't lost on the Board of Regents that many of the opportunities that lift us, such as the Boys in the Boat, the extraordinary work that you'll hear about more today from our next-gen scholars, and the College of Engineering, are all made possible or sustained by volunteers and cross-university partnerships. Thank you for all that you do.
And next up, Randy Hodgkins is going to give us a legislative preview and talk about capacity strategies for the year.
Thank you, Ken and Dave. Great presentation. Thank you and Dan for the kind words for our State Relations Office and our our colleagues in UW Medicine, and thank you, all of you, for your continued support. I've been asked to talk a little bit today about the next legislative session. I realize it's still April. We're not even halfway through the year, but just so you know, and I've said this before at other foundation board meetings, when the curtain goes down in the legislative session, we put all that stuff behind us and we start thinking about the next legislative session, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And I particularly want to give you a preview of, we've jumped a little bit far ahead, so let me get there in just a second. I want to give you a little bit of preview of one of the things that I think we're working on that might be one of our signature asks for next year. Now, because it's already up on the board, I'm going to turn the Wayback Machine back. Any Mr. Peabody and Sherman fans out there? No? Wait, woo! But back to tell my pop culture references are a little dated. We're going to go back to the Great Recession, 2009 to 2012. The state was cratering like most states around the country in terms of its revenue, and I think you might remember that the governor and the legislature during that time chose not to raise revenue on the citizens of the state, and so that meant fairly significant budget reductions for almost every state agency across the board. And how did the University of Washington stay afloat financially? Well, if you remember back, we made deep budget reductions across almost every department. We had tuition increases that the legislature imposed and that we adopted that were double digits for 4 straight years. And we also, as this headline from the Seattle Times on April 3rd, 2011 indicates, we had some limitations on the number of kids from the state of Washington that we could admit. Because remember, at the core, state funding is what helps subsidize the education of kids from the state of Washington. And if you don't have enough state support, then you can't admit as many state students as you'd like. So that was the article. I woke up on a Sunday morning back when I still got a newspaper on my desk and saw that and knew that was going to cause some consternation, and of course it did. And since that time, what's happened? So the state legislature, after 4 years of double-digit tuition increases across the state, and we weren't the only university that did that, they've clamped down tightly on tuition. We had a freeze for 2 years. We actually had a tuition cut for 2 years. And since that time, we've got a formula that limits us to tuition increases that have ranged about 2 to 3%. Some state funding has come back. I would call that modest increases in state funding, but certainly not the robust funding, and we're not anywhere near on an inflation basis back to where we were during the Great Recession. And we've worked really hard over the last decade and a half to increase the number of students from Washington that we admit. It's actually gone up across all 3 campuses, but it hasn't been keeping pace with the number of folks who'd like to have a UW of education, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Now, you may also know that since the COVID pandemic, enrollment in Washington state universities, both 2-year and 4-year, have declined significantly, particularly in the community and technical college system, as well as the regional universities. They're at historically lower levels. But there's one institution in the state that remains fully enrolled, and which has seen an increase in demand for and whoever's doing the slides, if you just go to the next one, I'd appreciate that. That's where the demand is high, and that's the University of Washington. Over the past several years, we've seen applications go up significantly. Now, a lot of these applications are from students from outside the state of Washington. Part of that's because our national and international reputations continue to be very, very strong. And also with the Common Application, it makes it easier for students to apply to more than one school. And it's important to remember that despite a high level of demand from non-residents, it's much harder to get into the University of Washington if you're from outside the state. So even though the applications have gone up, the number of students from out of state that we admit continues to be relatively low compared to a lot of our peers around the country. The challenge, though, is at present, particularly over the last several years, and particularly as we've come out of the pandemic, applications from in-state students have gone up as well, and we're having a hard time keeping up with that demand. Because of the limitations on state funding and also on tuition, the 2 things that help fund education here at the University of Washington, we've had to turn away over the last few years more than 1,000, in fact, not maybe even a lot higher, students who we didn't have enough financial resources to admit. And these are very talented students, many of them with 4.0 GPAs. that would do very well at the University of Washington. Some of them decide to attend other institutions in the state, but many of them go out of state. And when a lot of students go out of state after they graduate, they tend not to come back. And any economic development professional will tell you that's a pretty bad economic development strategy to be in the business of exporting smart young people. And it has been pretty painful for us for just not for us, but also for these students, then we don't have room to admit them. And especially since a lot of these students and their families have ties, deep ties to the University of Washington. Now, that's the bad news. Here's the good news. We are just at the beginning right now of really looking extensively at our ability to increase capacity here at the University of Washington with a very singular focus on in-state students. And we have some capacity in some majors, and with some other majors, particularly in computer science and engineering, we're going to need a little bit more financial help from the state of Washington. And we're going to have a lot more information to share with you when you guys meet together again in the fall. But one of the things we're going to work towards is going to the legislature next year, first the governor, then the legislature. And as you know, we will have a new governor next year. So there'll be two governors' budgets. But we're going to work with both of them, whoever the new one might be, to make sure that we can get some support for what will be essentially a fairly significant state funding ask for us to grow the number of in-state students that we can take here at the University of Washington. And we're going to need your help to push those things over the finish line. So thanks very much. Just wanted to give you a little preview for next year.
Every other year, we get a very robust overview of the of our foundation, our endowment fund, and the progress that's being made over there. And I'm pleased that we have Keith Ferguson here with us today to do just that. He's the Chief Investment Officer at our fund. Keith?
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the endowment. I don't actually get to speak a lot about the investment portfolio, so this is kind of fun. And it's always great to see the foundation and to see our important stakeholders and the partners that are here in the crowd. I'm going to try to be brief. Mary told me I have 5, maybe 6 minutes for my 6 slides. So if there's no time for Q&A here, Scott Davies, our COO, and myself will be in the back of the room. You can talk to us about it afterwards. So given the brief time, I wanted to talk about what's important. In active investment and active investment management, people are the most important thing. They come first, and then process comes second. People make the difference for investment returns. So let me tell you a little about our team. The UINCO, University of Washington Investment Management Company, is an 18-member team of investment professionals. We manage 2 pools of money. The endowment, it's about $5 billion and about $3 billion in the operating funds for the university. If you go to the next slide, please, Heidi. So this slide is about purpose. What's our purpose? The reason we do our job is to support campus, to give cash distributions back to campus to support students, faculty, and research. And so how do we do that? So we do it by taking a long-term perspective and thinking about compounding. And that compounding has really helped us grow the endowment to over $5 billion. That's the purple in this chart. The gold represents the $2 billion of cash distributions the last 20 years that have come out. And we're quite proud of that. That's important because that is our reason we come to work every day. And this remarkable growth really was a partnership with gifts coming in. We've had hundreds of millions of dollars of gifts from the advancement officers, and we really appreciate that partnership. And it also comes from investment returns. So it takes 2 to tango, I guess. Next slide. So given I only have 6 slides, this is my one market slide to tell you what the market outlook is. And in the last 43 years, this is the biggest change. Everyone knows inflation's higher, but interest rates have had a downward trend and a declining trend for a long, long time, and now they're actually rising. And so higher rates and higher treasury yields have a serious impact on investment returns. If it's a higher cost of capital, it's harder to make money. If you have higher inflation, you have lower corporate margins, and again, that makes an impact on investment returns. So interest rates and inflation, the outlook is unknown, but this big trend, I think, is sending us a clear indication that uncertainty makes our job a little harder, but also makes it more interesting. So if you go to the next slide. So what's our best tool in investments, especially as a long-term investor? It's diversification, and we do that through the asset allocation. We call this the Brotman pie chart, our team does. As you guys probably know, Jeff Brotman started the UINCO, the advisory committee. It was the first advisory committee, independent, here at the University of Washington back in 2001. And Jeff was very critical of thinking long-term and thinking from top down. And so we start with the asset allocation, and this is how we frame the portfolio. It's really a balanced account. So the purple is the capital appreciation, or a growth portfolio. That's where we have the equity investments that earn enough money to pay campus. And then the gold is our liquidity or capital preservation portfolio, and that provides stability. So how does this compare to other universities, or how does it compare to our peers? The big difference probably is that we have more public equity and less private equity, or less private investments. That's probably the biggest difference, if you remember about the endowment, if I had to leave you with one thing. If you go to the next slide. So what's the outcome, or what are the results? So this is our performance. I'll talk about two time periods, maybe the first year and the 10-year, and the 10 and the 20 are pretty similar. The first year, the CF trailed the passive index, which was driven by a very strong rebound in the broader public markets in 2023, and it was a very challenging 2022, if you remember, where both bonds and equities had a negative return. It was quite difficult. So we had a nice recovery here. But it's also a very unusual market this last year, 2023, and into this year too. Very heavy concentration in the large tech stocks. Everyone's heard of the Magnificent Seven or the Fab Four or FANG or FANG-M. But that concentration really drove the US equity performance. We saw, I think the top 10 were 60 to 62% of return for last year. And the other stocks in the S&P 500, not those 10, but the other 490 stocks, were only up 8%. So it was a very unique time period and might not be repeated. And it was a difficult time period for us, but we did okay with 11.7% return. But let's again talk about long-term, the 10-year numbers, and that would be the third row of bar charts there. The purple is our return, the gold is the peer group, public universities, and then the gray is the index, the passive benchmark. And we've done pretty well in those long-term periods, beating our targets. So in conclusion, active management works, or I think it works. And diversified portfolio provides stability for long-term performance. I think that's my main takeaway. And then the last slide here, in my 1 more minute that I've got, what's the impact? I guess the question here is, why does our UINCO investment team want to do this job? Why do they come to work every day? Our goal is really to maximize the dollars we earn so we can support campus and support students, faculty, and research. That's really what we do. And while the previous slides we talked about percentage returns, this is talking about dollars and actual dollars distributed. So 25 years ago, Rachel Woods gave a very generous gift, provided a very powerful impact for reforestation and School of Forestry, and now it's gone on to other colleges. And there's been over $850 million in money that's come out of this endowment. And in the same time, she's more than doubled the corpus, or the core original value of the endowment. So I guess this just shows the power of compounding. I won't quote Einstein, but you remember he said the 8th wonder of the world was compounding. Well, it really is quite important. So compounding and how we manage the endowment long-term, it really benefits current and future generations. So I'll leave it with that. And, are there any questions? Did I get my extra minute? If there's no questions, Scott or I can talk afterwards. Okay, thank you, everybody.
And I think Keith and Scott being available afterwards is great. So please do take advantage. If there was a question you wanted to ask but didn't want to ask in front of the full group, this is some of the really important work that's done here at the university. as financial advisors say, we need a lot of ballast in any kind of portfolio construction, but you also get the growth. I think it's a fascinating role and job, and we thank you very much for the good work you do. Next up, we're going to get an update, which perfectly follows on to that presentation, a university advancement update. And so, Mary Gresh, please.
Hi, everyone. I feel like a taskmaster with everyone saying the limited time I'm giving them. I'm usually the one that needs that tasking, so thank you, Keith. It's wonderful to have you here. I really appreciate the work of you and your great team. So, welcome and happy spring. It's wonderful to see you all. I know last spring we were here on a bright sunny day, oohing and ahhing over the flowers, so I appreciate that you're all here in a little bit of a dark room here, but wonderful to see you. I also want to take a moment for Clyde and Sherelle again. Where's Sherelle? The GVSA, the Gates Volunteer Service Award, is one of the most significant awards the university bestows on a person in our community, and particularly in our volunteer community. It's named in honor of the Gates family and Bill Sr., who I think has demonstrated to our community for decades and continues to through the family legacy, what it means to show up for the things you care about, for the communities you love, for the students that we serve. And Sherelle and Clyde, Clyde, sorry that you're on the couch being tended by your daughters. I hope you hear this. You have meant so much of that, Sherelle, in this community. When you think about the Brotherhood and the Sisterhood initiative that this board had participated in and saw the presentations at our last meeting, that is the work of Sherelle and Clyde Walker, so, and particularly you, Sherelle. So thank you. So spring is the moment when our advancement team is out and about and in community with all of you at various events across our school and colleges, in meetings and convenings. We have so many happening on campus, which Ken talked about. And of course, last weekend we had Admitted Student Day, which is sort of a perfect epilogue to the discussion that Randy and Dave and others were describing there in our success on the legislative strategy and what we hope is future success. It's very joyful, of course. We had 7,000 prospective students here on campus last weekend. It was a beautiful sunny day with them and their families. Our President Kause, Ed Taylor, Denzel Sweet all spoke to the students as well as others. You could have tasted the joy. It was so palpable. I see Diane Harris down there. I know there was a beautiful event at the Burke for the College of Arts and Sciences. The College of Engineering was in the arena. And of course, there's 50% of our students in state who get in and 50% who didn't. And I know all of you take these questions from our community about why did my son or daughter not get in, or there was a great student at this school, and we hear from you on those questions. Many of you call us and ask us, do we know anything about this? And of course we don't. In advancement, we have no influence or any even interaction on the admissions process. But I want to say I hope that the materials we've given you about how admissions works have been helpful to you. We provided a video with our director of admissions to sort of explain the admissions process. And also next fall, we will do a deep dive on how the admissions process works. We've done this with the board. I think about 10 years ago we did this, where it's actually an interactive session where you will look at I don't know what to call them, but you won't know who the students are, but actual applications, so you can see what the process is like on how they make decisions, because it is very thorough, a holistic admissions process, and I think you'll see how truly difficult it is when we have so many talented students seeking the University of Washington. So grateful for you being ambassadors in our community about that as well. I also want to report this has been a very strong fundraising year. It's my duty to tell you with that the generosity of all of you, of course, but then our amazing community continues. We are at $412 million to date here in April, and we're right on track for our usual pace for a given year. So I'm I'm very grateful for that. We continue to have data lags. I know some of you have asked about that on various, wondering where gifts are that are going through the system. We do have a finance transformation process underway here. I'm sure you've read about that in the newspaper and other, or I guess, as Randy said, do you read newspaper in your news feeds? That continues, but rest assured, we are tracking all of this closely, and soon we'll be in a more speedy approach, as we've always been for you, as gifts have come in. I want to note that one significant gift this year was a $10 million bequest to the School of Nursing. I don't know if Allison is here and Jenny, but it was a really beautiful gift from Larry Dalton and his wife Nicole. You may know them. And it's about flexible spending for nurses and affordability for nurses in our community. A really, really wonderful investment for students. I talk here frequently about campaign planning and strategic initiatives, and I am pleased to say again that our deans, chairs, faculty have been working on a broad array of university initiatives. I think I've mentioned these before, but I'll note this again. President Kelsey and Provost Serio, of course, are bringing strong leadership to this work with our deans and chancellors, and particularly I want to acknowledge Tricia Serio here, our new provost, who's taking the lead on pushing our thinking to the next level in key areas in major multidisciplinary ways. The 4 that are currently sort of in significant development, we just talked about this, in fact, with the development committee this morning, are applications of AI, climate actions and adaptations, youth mental health, and revitalizing and sustaining democracy are in deep development. We'll explore each of these in our board meetings over the next year. We envision a process where we can take a deep dive into each of the 4 over the course of a year and have you give us feedback on ideas, opportunities, how these would surface in our community, where there might be funding opportunities, a lot of great work you can do to help us with these objectives. I also want to note a recent story you may have read about in the AI space. You may have read about how the UW has joined a major new partnership with the University of Tsukuba, I think I'm saying that correctly, in Japan to advance research and innovation in AI. This partnership underscores the tremendous capacity of our research and innovation, as well as our commitment to shaping the public good. It's a great opportunity for our faculty to lead interdisciplinary work that leverages our strengths in computer science, in robotics, and other engineering fields, and to have impacts where AI can drive transformative change in our society. There are generous investments in this partnership from our longstanding partner Amazon, as well as from NVIDIA, and 9 Japanese companies. At the UW, this funding will support research awards, postdoctoral fellows and graduate students, and an undergraduate summer research program, and an entrepreneurship boot camp program. This is well-timed, as Provost Serio has commissioned a task force on artificial intelligence led by Dean Anin Day, who I think is here, and our Vice President for Information Technology, Andreas Bowman. There are 4 subgroups of this task force and this structure that is being led. And in this substantive structure in June, we expect to have a report out on significant opportunities and places for leadership for the university. And our academic leaders in this process are excited about their getting thinking and input from this board as this moves forward. I also want to share some news about a very special gift, and then President Kelsey can expand upon this in the Insider's Corner. As part of the Big Ten, our student athletes will compete on a highly visible coast-to-coast stage, earning more championships, we hope, and thriving as powerhouse competitors. But as you also know, we will receive less than a full share for our first 5 years in the conference due to the revenue strategies as we came in during the first 6 years of membership. These are short-term financial challenges, but ones that we're working through. And to facilitate this transition, athletics will be announcing a Go Big campaign later this spring. I am so excited to share this morning that athletics received their first official gift for the Go Big campaign. And it came from head football coach Jedd Fisch and his wife Amber. I think that's worth noting. And I want to note that that gift was $1 million. If you know, and you can think about the significance of that for the Fish family, and they are dedicating that $1 million to football facility upgrades. Anamari and I think we don't know of another coach in the country that is putting this kind of stake in the ground to be at his university with his program, and we're deeply grateful. Thank you. I want to take a moment to talk about our committee work. And I want to remind us that committees are one of the very active ways you can participate in the board. And we were thinking, because our committees are doing such great work right now since our UW visioning process, that we're going to ask chairs to report on a sort of episodic basis about some of the work here in our board meetings, as well as the written reports in your packets. Our committee, my committee chair thing came out of my remarks. If you're a committee chair, will you please stand? And you know who you are. There's Dave Frankie. All right, where's Laura Solipsky? Sean O'Leary. There's others of you. There's more. You're hiding. I know you're hiding. There's 6 of you. But our committee chairs have been working really hard to make our committees do extraordinary work. And many of you ask me, how can I do more? What else can I do for the board? What else can I do for the university? So I want to answer that question in a few ways. One is find a committee. These committees are doing amazing work. We had a development committee meeting this morning with which Laura Solipsky said it was exciting. They're planning different engagement events and other things that I think you'll find highly energizing and also strategic as we prepare for the next campaign. We have a strategic overlay we'll put on that work. If committees aren't your thing, or if you're still exploring that, here's another thing I'd like to say. Please keep learning. Today you're going to hear from some amazing students and faculty, and one of the greatest things you can do as a board member is learn about what's happening at the University of Washington and share it in your networks, share it with your communities, connect us with people you know can help advance this effort. Truly, and that's one of the great things about being an ambassador. Make introductions for our advancement team. We're always looking for connections. We're looking to invite new people into the community. If you know people in your networks who are interested in things that we are working on here, please connect us. It's an excellent way to facilitate, as a board member, your work on the board. Dave Zeke mentioned UW Impact. Many of you are members of our legislative advocacy group. If you're not, I really encourage you to find out how. I don't know if Courtney's here today. You can see Lou or me or any of us. Join UW Impact. It's a wonderful way to advocate for the university. And of course, ask us questions anytime. We're happy to answer your questions about things you might be curious about, ways you can engage. You should get UW Today every day in your inbox. If you don't, let us know. It has amazing stories every day of the research and student work that's happening at the university, of ways in which we're improving lives in the general public. It's a fascinating read. I read it every day. I think most of us do who are regulars on it there. And that might help you find things that you're interested in and ways we can tailor your experience, which is something we also seek to do. And nobody does that better than Lou Hine. I know many of you reach out to her. She helps you get to places and things. Always reach out. And finally, of course, you all give. And for that, we are deeply, deeply grateful. Let us know the meaning of that, what's most meaningful for you, and we'll direct you. But as you know, in almost any capacity, the things you care about are happening here. They're improving the world. They're changing the lives of students. And we want to make sure in your experience on the board, you have a chance to give in the way that is most joyful and meaningful to you. So on behalf of University Advancement, I thank you. And now we're going to wow your socks off with some of our students and faculty. And Ken's going to lead our next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for reminding us that one of the aspects of board work that I enjoy the most, and I think is a symbol often of really effective boards and teams, is people ask good questions. That's really the job of boards, I think, is to ask good questions and engender dialogue and thought and kind of, pushing to all four corners of the document, so to speak, as we think about how to improve our university and our efforts. Moving on to engineering, and as Mary said, the next great section here of this meeting. 1 in 4 U.S. adults live with a disability, which means that it is very likely that someone close to you has been affected. The mission of the UW Center for Research and Education on Accessible Technology Experiences, or CREATE, is to make technology accessible and to make the world accessible through technology. Importantly, in line with the disability movement mantra, "Nothing about us without us," the center is dedicated to including people with disabilities as creators of technology. Here to introduce us to the work of CREATE is Donna Saxon, College of Engineering representative.
Thank you, Ken. My late husband and I were plunged into the world of disability without warning. One evening, before getting on his bicycle to ride up Capitol Hill, he had a seizure and stopped breathing. Or ever the software engineer, as he put it, he blue screened. We were so fortunate that his system did reboot. Once his brain tumor was diagnosed, the doctors were blunt. Yet what they did not tell us is that there would be a series of literally overnight onset disabilities. I think that's because we were part of the illness community. As a result of caregiving, I was injured and spent months in a wheelchair. It wasn't until I got impatient with not being able to ride a bike that I discovered some of the amazing inventions of the disability community. I think it's because I was part of the injury community. So that's why CREATE's work is very personal to me. And you may not realize it, but if you're carrying a mobile phone right now, it's literally touching you. I'm so happy to introduce this important example of engineering excellence for the public good. The College of Engineering prepares students to have significant impact by helping to shape a healthier and better world for all. In many ways, CREATE is a microcosm of the interdisciplinary nature of modern engineering, as it represents collaboration not just within engineering, but across the university. To me, it's living the phrase, "Be boundless." What Boundless Engineering has shown is that some of the most exciting discoveries are found in the spaces between disciplines, and CREATE is a powerful example of what can be accomplished by focusing on high-impact, cross-disciplinary research for the public good. Today, you'll hear from a team of faculty and students from CREATE. We'll begin with Kat Steele, Associate Director of CREATE, Director of the AMP Lab, and the Albert Kobayashi Professor in Mechanical Engineering. Then we'll see 4 examples of projects impacting lives across the span of a lifetime. And we'll close with Jennifer Mankoff, Director of CREATE, and the Richard E. Ladner Professor in the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. Kat?
Hello, everyone. We're so excited to be here today for CREATE. As Donna mentioned, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I love to study how we move and explore our world. Now, one of our central tenets of our work is that everyone have access to move, explore, and innovate. But that's not always the case. This is an image from the UW Daily in the 1970s showing a campus protest to ramp the curbs, a now classic example of universal design in action. This image is a reminder of the long history at UW of advocacy and inclusion led by and for people with disabilities. Now, if you happen to have your smartphone on you, as Donna mentioned, can you hold it up real fast? All right, there's many in the room. Well, did you know that in your hand, you have an accessibility product with its roots here at UW? In 2008, UW's students and faculty hacked the iPhone, which until then, for the prior 3 years, had been inaccessible to many users. And they invented the interaction techniques by which screen readers can be used with touchscreens, and which now underlie all Android and Apple phones today. Or I'm guessing that many of you have used a navigation app this past week. And perhaps if you or a friend use a wheelchair or other mobility device, you might have hoped and wished that there was a way to personalize and customize your route around our very busy and very hilly city. Well, Access Map, which was created and first deployed in Seattle, does exactly that, and it is now available in 10 cities and supported by the US Department of Transportation. Or if I've now distracted you with your phone and you're looking at your home screen that's cluttered with apps and wondering how many of these apps are actually accessible. A recent UW study analyzed 10,000 apps and found that over half were inaccessible. And this work was recently cited by the US Department of Justice in its recommendations for the future standards of digital accessibility. This is just a small sampling of the impact of the breadth and depth of accessibility research here at UW. To amplify and further this work, 5 years ago, we founded CREATE, the Center for Research and Education on Accessible Technology and Experiences. Funded by an inaugural gift from Microsoft and private donors, our mission is to make technology accessible and to make the world accessible through technology. Our team, which continues to grow with amazing new faculty and students, bridges the College of Engineering, Disability Studies, the School of Medicine, and the iSchool. Our vision is a world in which people with disabilities are full participants in research and innovation. We advocate for people with disabilities in education, in research, and in our communities. And as Donna mentioned, today we're lucky enough to have 4 of our amazing trainees here to share their work. Their work really highlights the multidisciplinarity that's at the core of our center, and also highlights how important accessible technology is across the lifespan. So we'll start out today with Dr. Kim Ingram. She was a CREATE postdoc with myself and Dr. Feldner in rehab medicine. And her work, which was funded by a private donor, examined the effects of access to early mobility technology for kids with disability. Luckily for us, UW was smart enough to hire her after she finished her postdoc, so she is now an assistant professor in electrical and computer engineering.
Thank you, Kat. Allow me to introduce you to some of the absolutely adorable kids that we work with. And like all toddlers, these little ones have an innate desire to move, explore, and interact with the world around them. But because these kids have disabilities that limit their mobility, most often their movement at this age is being carried by a parent or pushed in a stroller. Now, during typical development, kids will begin to crawl and walk on their own by around 18 months old. And this access to move independently triggers cascades of development, and not just in motor skills, but in cognition, communication, visual, language, social, and emotional processing. But kids with disabilities often don't start moving on their own until they're around 3 to 5 years old, and this can lead to a huge gap in those early mobility experiences. And this means that kids can miss out on important developmental opportunities across all domains simply because they have delayed mobility. Powered mobility is one type of technology that can help fill this gap. Now, when I say powered mobility, you're probably picturing something like this, a powered wheelchair. Now, these are amazing devices, but they're simply too big, too heavy, and too complex for toddlers to use effectively. Now, fortunately, in 2020, PerMobile released the Explorer Mini, and with lots of input from clinicians and researchers, the Explorer Mini was specifically designed for kids under the age of 3. That means it's colorful, it's lightweight, it's customizable, and easily maneuverable, so that toddlers can do the thing they do best, explore. This is a video of Elijah, and this is his first time using the Explorer Mini. Now, as you can see, he actually begins by accidentally activating the joystick. First, he's a little surprised, and he looks to Mom for some encouragement, but he quickly realizes that he can use that yellow ball to move on his own. This is pretty typical behavior we see with kids the first time they use the device. He definitely understands that yellow ball is important, and he can now use it to experiment with the effects of his own actions. But most importantly, he is excited to try again. We recently loaned the Explorer Mini to 24 families in the community with kids with disabilities, and after using powered mobility in their homes for 16 weeks, kids displayed significant improvements in cognitive, social, emotional, motor, and communication skills. And this early result really highlights the tremendous impact that this device and similar devices can have on development. Now, this is an engineering presentation. So being the curious engineers that we are, we also wanted to measure this exploration. So we partnered with Lucy, a smart wheelchair technology company, to build the first instrumented Explorer Mini. And we added custom sensors to measure all the different ways that the child could interact with the device. Along with the Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences, we recently asked 13 kids with diverse disabilities to come into the lab here on campus and play using the Explorer Mini. And every child in our study, regardless of their disability or their current mobility status, was able to use the Explorer Mini to move independently. I'd also like to highlight some of our collaborative work with organizations like Project Sidewalk, where we are tracking where kids and families are using powered mobility in their communities, and with Kindering Developmental Center, where we're working to build new clinical tools to assist with powered mobility use during early intervention. Self-initiated mobility is a fundamental human right, and we are committed to a future where all kids have access to the technology that they need to do what they do best: explore. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our second trainee, Ather Sharif. Ather is a PhD candidate in the Allen School for Computer Science and Engineering, and his work has been recognized by numerous organizations, including recently being named to our very own Husky 100 list.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Kim. I'm Ather, and this is Liz. She lives in Philadelphia. She has a mobility disability, and she uses a wheelchair. Every single day, she commutes to work using the train. She takes the train from the 15th Street station to West Philadelphia. Now, every morning she wakes up, she goes to the app called Google Maps. We all use it, right, to commute plan our trip. And she sees that the station that she wants to go to is accessible through that wheelchair accessible icon next to the name. She feels reassured, and then she heads to the station. She gets there, and what happens? The elevator is not working. What does she do then? Uber and Lyft don't offer accessible vehicles. Wheelchair cabs are sparse, and also these options are really expensive. And even then, she could take a bus, but that would add an hour and a half to her commute. So what does she do? This is where Unlock Maps comes in. Now, Unlock Maps is an open data map that visualizes the real-time accessibility of urban rail transit stations. It helps people, such as Liz, and other people with mobility disabilities, people who are pregnant, people who carry heavy bikes and equipments, civic hackers, and disability advocates. As you can imagine, that this project and this Unlock Maps is very, very personal to me, and it would have helped Liz in informing her of the elevator outage. Now, users like Liz can use this map to see which stations are accessible, which stations are not accessible, and which stations are experiencing real-time elevator outages at that given point in time. Similarly, users can also use this Unlock Maps to filter by stations that are accessible, stations that are not, search for their desired station, filter by transit authorities and lines. Similarly, people who use bikes or need parking can also use this tool to filter by those options, to filter to those stations where those features are available. Users can also use this tool to see the reliability of the stations by looking at the history of elevator outages. Not just that, the users can also see the accessible restaurants near the stations without having to go through photos for each restaurant on Yelp to determine the accessibility. Furthermore, the users can also know the accessible restrooms around the stations as well, and also get the instructions on how to access them through crowdsourced instructions. Now, Unlock Maps was built with a central focus of accessibility in mind. At present, it's deployed in 6 different North American cities, including Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Seattle, Bay Area, and Toronto. Now, so far, we've collected millions of elevator outages from 2,336 transit stations from these cities every hour since the past 4 years. More data is being collected and made publicly available as we speak. Now, this data also has benefits outside of accessibility as well. For example, researchers and advocates can use this data to answer questions such as, which neighborhoods get the most elevator outages? Which neighborhoods take the longest to repair those elevator outages? These are really important questions to answer, and the answers can help us learn more about our cities and make and drive policy changes. At present, we are expanding Unlock Maps to more cities, including Tokyo, Seoul, Washington, D.C., and Singapore. Through Unlock Maps, we really hope to make commute planning equitably accessible to people with disabilities, especially people with mobility disabilities, such as Liz, such as myself. And with that said, it was an absolute pleasure to talk about Unlock Maps to you all today. And now it is my absolute pleasure also to welcome our third CREATE trainee, a PhD candidate in the Human-Centered Design and Engineering Department, my good friend and amazing researcher, Emma McDonald.
Thank you so much, Ather, and thank you to you all. I'm so excited to share my work today around designing collective communication access. Making communication accessible to deaf and disabled people is a key concern of accessibility research. Yet, when we set out to design these accessible communication tools, we tend to only have one kind of user in mind: disabled users. While it is incredibly important to ensure that communication access tools serve these users well, I argue that we're missing half of the picture. Communication is an inherently interactive activity, and we don't treat non-disabled communication partners as key stakeholders in access when we design communication technologies. Yet, deaf and disabled scholars and activists have known that access is a collective practice for decades. I have on screen an example from an ADA protest, where activists arranged a wheelchair-accessible stage and ASL interpretation. My work learns from the past and current practice of disabled people's activism to interrogate how technology could be designed in a way that treats access as a collective responsibility. Today, I'll share with you a brief portion of my dissertation research, focused on real-time captioning. We have captions running right now, and hopefully they're making this presentation more accessible to those of you who are deaf and hard of hearing, and those of you who aren't. My research in this space was guided by two questions. First, how do groups with hearing and deaf and hard of hearing members negotiate access during online captioned conversations? And second, what technologies would groups design to support themselves in communicating accessibly? We recruited 4 groups to help us answer these questions, all with at least one deaf or hard of hearing and at least one hearing member. And they joined us for a 3-phase co-design process. I'll now highlight some of the designs participants generated for themselves to support their future accessible video calls. First, how do you know who is speaking and when people are speaking at the same time? A highly inaccessible context for caption conversation use. I have on screen an example video prototype we developed with participants. Emma and Lucy are speaking at the same time, so both of our names are in the captions, color-coded to match our video feeds. And we also have a multiple speaker warning in the middle of the screen, using technical infrastructure to help highlight communication breakdown and help people address inaccessibilities. Participants also envisioned more ways that conversation technologies could allow them to provide indiscrete feedback on when conversation behaviors become inaccessible. In this example, someone could hit the turtle button and let the current speaker know that they need to slow down in order for them to understand. Maintaining accessible communication behaviors is hard, and so is interrupting a speaker to ask them to change their behavior. There's significant room here for technology to provide the infrastructure for people to create access together. We also have an example of ways that video conferencing infrastructure could provide people more ways to share and discuss access, allowing platforms to provide ways that people could share their meeting access norms. Even just simply making it so that people had to agree to them before joining a meeting gives the infrastructure and the expectation that people make communication accessible together. I want to leave us with a key takeaway. When we design accessibility technologies for group use, new design spaces emerge. These are exciting areas for technical development, And most exciting to me, they also allow us to center disability justice principles such as collective access in the design of new tools. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm now excited to introduce Kate Glasgow, a first-year PhD student in the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering, whose work on the accessibility of generative AI is supported by the National Science Foundation's CS Grad for US Fellowship. Kate.
Thank you so much, Emma. So, generative AI presents some interesting opportunities for improving the accessibility of everyday tasks. In this slide, for example, we show an image of Be My AI, a popular app that provides alt text for images, in this case showing an image description for something you would do in daily life, like view the contents of the fridge with this nice juicy watermelon. However, emerging research, including our own, has also highlighted the risks of generative AI when it comes to representing people with disabilities. This is a real-world issue, as generative AI is starting to be used for tasks that impact people. For example, popular brands and companies in recruiting and productivity, such as Lever, iPlace, and Recruiter.com, already describe the use of ChatGPT for candidate ranking and summarization today. Now imagine for a moment you're a hiring manager evaluating resumes. Here's a resume that has an award section, and it's for a research intern role. What happens if I add these two awards to the resume? Raise your hand if you think the first one was better. Okay, no takers? Raise your hand if you think the second one is better. Okay, that's a lot of you. What about now, if those awards and honors include mention of a disability? This question inspired this research. As a disabled job seeker with multiple disability-related awards and scholarships on my own CV, I've been told before by well-meaning people to leave them off, that disability detracts from my other achievements and could bias reviewers against me. In this experiment, I wanted to see if they were right when ChatGPT was the reviewer. So we asked ChatGPT to compare versions of the exact same resume, one enhanced with extra leadership award scholarship and that mentioned disability, and the first one without. We tried this with 6 enhanced CVs that added 4 disability-related awards and items. The CVs were pretty long, 10 pages, so the additions were only a small part of the overall resume. We gave ChatGPT 10 tries per CV, and it consistently discounted the enhancements. For example, ChatGPT described the CVs as having less leadership experience despite having 1 additional leadership-related award. This translated to rankings too, with the CVs that mentioned disability being consistently ranked lower. There are many examples of GPT-4 showing indirect bias towards people with disabilities. It listed involvement in disability advocacy as a con, stating that, while commendable, may not be directly relevant to the technical and research focus of the company role. So we trained a custom version of GPT that is disability aware, telling it, you are knowledgeable about the disabled experience and aware of the underrepresentation of disabled people in the workforce. You'll avoid making assumptions about users' abilities and experiences and ensure that your language is inclusive. We did not add any additional training data. We just changed GPT-4's directive. Our custom disability-aware GPT showed significantly less bias, but when we tried it with specific disabilities like autism and depression, it was still unreliable. This research shows us that being aware of the biases built into GPT and making small changes led to a noticeable difference in how it treated disability. But work needs to be done deliberately, and humans must stay in the loop for tasks where other humans' well-being and careers are at stake. To conclude, everyday use of generative AI has bias and errors, but generative AI use is inevitable, and it can also improve accessibility. We have to think about and invest work into making fixing bias and mistakes in generative AI more accessible than it is today. responsible generative AI use with the input and contribution of disabled engineers, makers, designers, and users is the future that we want. Now I would like to introduce you to my PhD advisor and the director of CREATE, Dr. Jennifer Minkoff.
Thank you, Kate. Just pulling out my notes. So thanks to all of our presenters for illuminating a little bit of what CREATE does. And what I would like to do now is just give a broader overview of CREATE's commitments and its vision. 50% of CREATE, including myself, identify as disabled. So it should be no surprise that one of our core commitments is to center the disability experience and people with disabilities in our work. Another core commitment of CREATE is to advocate for and support disabled people. We do this at UW for students and faculty with disabilities, and we do it in the community at large. We are also working to graduate engineers who have learned how to create accessible technologies so that we can increase accessibility in all of the products that all of us want to use. I think it's clear I think it's clear from what you've seen today that innovation is in our blood and in our future at CREATE. And we must continue to ensure that new technologies, such as recent advances in AI, address accessibility just as we did with the phone many years ago, while ensuring that access is not overlooked in important areas, such as big societal problems like sustainability, and making sure that inclusion is part of what we do, such as our recent innovations with race, disability, and technology. We have always worked to ensure education access as well in CREATE, as you saw with our work with toddlers, and this extends all the way to teachers in our minds. And here I want to mention not just how crucial our work has been, but also how crucial it is going to be. Just today, that Department of Justice rule that Kat mentioned was officially signed. And because of that, those standards, which are going into effect this year, are going to require that all teaching materials across all levels of education, as well as other government apps and services, are accessible within 2 years at institutions of the size of UW. This is a big challenge that we have to take on, and should have frankly taken on a while ago. CREATE embodies a world in which people with disabilities are full participants in developing this future and ensuring accessibility. At all ages and in all spaces, we work to support and celebrate disability to make things better for our current and our future selves. I just want to close by thanking some of our funders and community partners who are essential to the work that we do. And I invite you to join us upstairs after this session to hear more about CREATE and see some demos. Thank you so much.
That was great. Really, thanks to our presenters from the College of Engineering. Next up, I'm going to invite Lynn Grinstein to join me up here. And we'd like to hear her thoughts on the passing of Nancy Evans.
Thank you, Ken. And I saw Dan Sr. and Dan Jr., Governor Dan, come in the back. I want to thank you, too, for inviting me to talk about Nancy. They're here representing a big family. The Evans had 3 sons, Bruce, Mark, and Dan, and 9 grandchildren. And through all the work they have done, that has always been the priority for both of them. We're on the University of Washington campus, which is a place that is dedicated to one of Nancy's many passions, public education. But there were a lot more. And if you read about Nancy or do any research, you'll kind of be inundated with all the things she did. So I'm going to read just a quick list. Music. That was probably her other big passion, particularly the Seattle Symphony, where she was a trustee for 35 years. And then on the Benaroya Hall Foundation for another 27 years. Then going way back, I'm going to read this list. She was the founder of the Washington State Governor's Mansion Foundation, the patrons of South Sound cultural activities, the Washington State Capitol Museum Foundation, of course, her alma mater, Whitman College. She was a trustee there for 14 years. KCTS 9, Northwest Parkinson's Foundation, and this one I'm not sure about, First Ladies Mental Health Month, Planned Parenthood of Olympia, and Friends of Cancer Lifeline. And then, of course, the University of Washington. While Dan served as a regent, Nancy was busy creating her own legacy. So I'm going to read another list because it was supplied to me, and it's pretty complicated and long, and if I goof it up, you're going to see a lightning bolt come out of the ceiling, and Nancy's voice will say, "Oh, Lynn, you goofed that one up." So here it goes. Nancy had been serving as the Evans School Representative Director for the UW Board since 2016 and served several times as Gala Chair. She served as the co-chair for the Campaign for Evans, the school's most recent campaign that raised $24 million to remodel the historic Parrington Hall into a beautiful and contemporary space for tomorrow's public leaders. Nancy was a dedicated member of the Advisory Committee and the Dean's Council since 2001 and gave her characteristic, honest, practical, and insightful leadership to form the Evans School's strategy. She supported the launch of the Nancy Bell Evans Center on Nonprofits and Philanthropy, NBEC, which elevated the nonprofit and social impact sectors through research, education, and leadership development. For nearly 2 decades, NBEC provided high-quality leadership in the nonprofit and philanthropic sector, including graduating more than 300 nonprofit leaders for our Nonprofit Executive Leadership Institute and Propel Leadership Institute. Her legacy lives on in many ways at the Evans School, including the Nancy Bell Evans Endowment for Excellence, which continues to propel research, education, outreach programs that support service and civic engagement. I know all this about the UW, but of course, Nancy did all this by being 150% support staff, stern debater, truth teller, and probably conscience to the wonderful Governor Dan Evans, whose life of public service is legendary. And of course, mothering 3 rambunctious boys, from what I hear. I always think about the fortuitousness of people like Dan and Nancy meeting. And I think about that first date in 1959 when Nancy was teaching music and Dan was just beginning a political career, and how lucky we all are that they got together and created what they did for the state of Washington and for all of us. So I'm going to ask now for a moment of silence for Nancy, and most of you knew her, so picture something happy or funny or particularly meaningful to you. And if you didn't know her very well and can't do that, just picture her dancing with Dan at the governor's ball. Thank you. And now I'd like to call on Jody Sanford.
So Lynn has brought us into the essence of Nancy Evans, and I had the good fortune of meeting her and spending the last 3 years with her since I assumed the deanship at the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance here at the university. And today we were thinking about how can we bring some of that essence into the room in a way that's about the future, because Nancy's commitment to the university was so much about the future. And when I came, she and the governor have been so generous to me, inviting me to their home, and we got in a lot of conversation. And she kept on saying, I don't understand what's going on in this country right now. Why can't people connect to this legacy of public service that was so central to her heart and the whole list we've just seen? And we began to have conversations about how I think in higher education we have presumed that people would come to these institutions, they would learn, study, they would innovate like the wonderful center we've just heard about, and that somehow everybody would just get it, that public service was part of the package. And I think what we see is we were wrong in making that assumption. And that actually we need to celebrate, we need to support, we need to narrate the importance of public service. We need to magnify and create ways that young people can really build that commitment that Nancy so embodied in their body, in their heart, and in their mind. And so when I arrived, I began thinking about what could we do, and we were approached with 3 other universities around the country around this idea of a civic leader corps. How might we connect with other universities who are working on this problem and connect undergraduates, not ones that say they want to be a political science major or an economics major, but the philosophers and the artists and the engineers and the political scientists to get them involved. And so I went to the wonderful undergraduate affairs unit here and said to them, hey, will you partner with the Evans School? And Fran Lowe, who's in the building, said, yeah. Ed Taylor said, yeah. And then we began to explore what this might be. And what has evolved is a wonderful tri-campus program, because after the first year, we went to the chancellors at Tacoma and Bothell, and we said, do you want to be part of this growing national cohort of a next-gen civic leader corps? And they said yes. And so what has evolved is that the national movement has been growing. There are now 18 universities that are involved in this network. They are small universities from elite places. They're HBCUs. They're large universities like this one. But what they do is they connect students who are public servants. They come here that way and say, that's something that actually really matters. You need to do more of it. You need to be able to connect to other kids, do things outside of the classroom. When you volunteer, think about why is it when you're volunteering at the food shelf that we need to have food shelves in the United States. And through the guidance of our colleagues at Tacoma and Bothell, through Danbi Li Hong and Amen Sagai, who are in the room with us today, we've built this wonderful initiative. So it's my great pleasure and honor, really, to introduce 3 students. Esther Himmelfarb is from our Seattle program. Maha Roy is from the Bothell program. And Jeanette Musawi is from Tacoma. And I've had the opportunity myself to spend time with them at initiatives where we've been working with the Lieutenant Governor around how do we support civic health. We've gotten into a lot of good trouble together, as John Lewis would say, helping people who come from different points of view actually have experiences of talking with one another. And for me, it's amazing to watch these young people lead. And I will also just say, I feel like part of what grown-ups have to do right now is to show that public institutions are trustworthy, that we can listen and support and connect them together so that their magic and innovation can shine. And so, Esther, I think you're up first. Because that's what Nancy would want us to do.
Thank you for that introduction. Again, I'm Esther Himmelfarb. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a third year here at the University of Washington Seattle campus, and I was first introduced to NextGen in my Leadership 100 course my freshman year, Leadership Theory and Practice. My first event with NextGen was the Evans School 60th anniversary, my second year, and there I met one other person who was attending the event with me. We got to know each other briefly, and then fast forward to that January, we were both on the NextGen Student Advisory Board together. Now, this past week, her name's Natalie. She invited me to her Taylor Swift listening party at her house. And although I was sick, I think that invitation is a representation of how NextGen has treated me. It's brought me some of my closest friends, some of which are up here, and it's also shown me what the next part of my life is going to look like. I've been able to attend events like Jody mentioned. I got to go to New York City and New Jersey to attend the NextGen Summer Summit with the Volcker Alliance and the National Network. This past fall, I got to go to the UW Tacoma NextGen launch, where I was first exposed to program development and understanding how to connect students with university faculty and how that relationship can grow a program. I also got the opportunity to help host and plan the legislative reception that took place at the Burke Museum this past fall. And there, students got to interact with local and state legislators to understand how they came to be in their own career goals, career paths, and all of them being UW alumni. This coming summer, I have the opportunity and the privilege of attending the Junior Summer Institute Public Policy and International Affairs program at Carnegie Mellon University. And without the support of the NextGen Network, as well as the exposure to public service and civic engagement, I wouldn't be able to be where I am and understand what I can do with my future and how that applies to public service. And I'm very excited for you all to hear from Janat and Maha. And without further ado, I give you Maha. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Maharoy. I am a sophomore student at UW Bothell. I am majoring in law, economics, public policy, and minoring in human rights. For me, UW is a family. It's a family. I am a sole survivor of Kashmir genocide. I came to United States when I was 17 years old on my sleepers, and my clothes were blood tinted. And then I got into UW. There was a hope of democracy in me. I was young, but there was a hope that I deserved to be alive. And then I was housed by a UW faculty. And there is a deep resilience in my soul where I want justice for my family, for me, and for the marginalized community in the United States and across the world. For me, as I say, UW is my family because I got to meet with so many awesome people. Just imagine a young boy coming to United States not knowing a single person and didn't knew English, like proper English. I speak 9 languages. And coming here, experiencing a whole different society and food, no one, like I was homeless, I was starving. And from there, I got to know about NextGen program. NextGen program acts as a bridge between my political life and my student life. I met with these awesome friends of mine. And through there, I had many networking events, connections, free pizza, and a free t-shirt. Yeah, like I was really, like I was homeless. I didn't have a single dollar in my pocket. And from there, we had really good opportunities to have conversation on tough topics. And there was this event where we had a discussion with the Lieutenant Governor of Washington State. It was on civic health. I discussed with him about how important polarization is, because polarization puts life of the marginalized poor people and put them near to that dying. And for me, it's personal. And after that, there were other national networks, and I had been with Esther to New York. From there, we always love sunshine and rainbows, but there is darkness. Without darkness, without rain, there will be no rainbows. And we need to accept that there is darkness, and we need to work on it. So as soon as I entered the space and I shared my dark background, I heard how a lesbian student earns $3 an hour in Alabama and tries to somehow survive. I heard an experience from a black single mother in Iowa and how she feels discriminated. I heard a half Lebanese student in Nebraska where she's like, which race should I take? Will I take like white or North African, like African? And as I see Anna Marie here, I was in a meeting with Melissa Litwing from New York's City Council, and she's a UW alumni, and I realized, I felt like Anna Marie was so right. University of Washington is not just like University of Washington, it's University for Washington. And I will say, for me, connections I made with people, it was from heart to heart. It was unconditional. I saw my sister got abducted, the last family member got abducted and was sold for $7.40 and was human trafficked to Pakistan. I saw my house got bombarded, mass murder, homelessness. But there was a dream of democracy. Now I'm working with the Washington State Chamber of Commerce in building up a financial organization meant to provide access to everyone, because I never had a banking system. I am the first person to have a banking account in my whole family, and I want to make it accessible to everyone, to the poor, persecuted, and the helpless. And for me, I will say, it is very hard to protect the democracy, because when it comes to poor, marginalized, and persecuted community, they are threatened by so-called democracy. And if it is threatened, if it threatens, it's not a democracy. And I invite you, everyone in this room, to join with me. Let's brainstorm and bring some actions so that we can solve real problems. I never gave up. I dare to serve the democracy to the poorest and blackest. Thank you.
I'm so proud of my colleagues. Hello everyone, my name is Jannat Moussaoui and I am the UW Tacoma Next Gen Ambassador. I am a second year at UW Tacoma, and I am so grateful today to be up here speaking about my Next Gen experience and how much it has shaped me and my career. I found out about Next Gen when it started in fall of 2022. I started up here, and I used to drive up here for every event, almost every gathering, just to find out about this program that was so interesting to me. And then fast forward a few months to March of 2023, there was an event called Women in the Capitol, where I actually got to go to the Capitol for the first time and meet Governor Jay Inslee, as well as the Washington Treasurer and a few Washington Supreme Court justices. And that was a very amazing experience for me. It taught me how to confidently be in such important places and talk to such important people. And in summer of that year, of 2023, I got to apply to the Next Gen Public Service Fellowship, which was then renamed to the Jackson Monroe Public Service Fellowship. And that granted me $5,000 to be able to do an internship with Upward Bound Summer Learning Institute and to work with high schoolers from minority backgrounds who actually got to live on a college campus at the Evergreen State College and kind of have a little simulation of how college would be. So they got to go to classes, they got to go to like the student life aspects afterwards, and they got to actually sleep in the dorms.
And I was a resident advisor for that program, so I got to directly interact with these students and talk to them and listen to their stories. And that listening aspect truly opened my eye and shaped my career and where I wanted to go. It directed me in the path of social work, more specifically macro social work, and combating the things that were harming these students at a more policy advocacy level and institutional level. And it shaped my major after that and my want and desire to be more civically engaged. Fast forward to fall of 2023, NextGen came down to my campus. I was very excited about NextGen started at the UW Tacoma campus, and also relieved so I don't have to drive all the way to Seattle. But I got to be ambassador of that program when it started, and that experience in itself taught me so much. I learned more about how to coordinate events, outreach to community members, and more importantly, how to seek support. The NextGen program at UW Tacoma is housed under the Institute for Innovation and Global Engagement, the IIGE, and they've done a great job at supporting me and the program and helping it flourish into what it is now, and I am so grateful for that. And 2 months ago, I got to go to the Arizona State University to represent the UW Tacoma NextGen program at a national NextGen conference with Volcker Alliance. And that was great. I got to meet a lot of students from the national network, and I got to bring back some ideas about how to improve the NextGen program on my campus. But it was also a great personal experience because that was my first time flying. So it taught me something. And I could go on and on about all the ways that NextGen has helped me and shaped me, but we would all be here all night. So on behalf of all of us, I would love to thank you all so much for allowing us to come up here and speak to you about our experiences, and we all look forward to connecting with you further during happy hour and to share our experiences as well as answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
That's so great. It's just one example, one of many, many examples, but one example of how Nancy Evans' impact has brought forward people like these students, how it's impacted their lives, but probably more importantly, how it's empowered them to have an impact going forward. Just so wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your journey and where you hope to go with it. Next, I'd like to ask President Kelsey and Karen Lee to join us for the Insider's Corner. As I said, it's always one of the best parts of these meetings, so I really look forward to it. So help me in.
Okay, thanks. They turned it on. Okay. Oh, there you go. All right. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Lee, and I am a Foundation Board at Large Director, and I am a 1994 graduate of the UW Law School. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so am I.
Moderating this Insider's Corner. And also, I think that this is draft day, is it not, for the NFL?
I guess it is.
I think it is. So maybe I think it starts now. So we maybe have some good news later today.
So by the end of this, I might be gone.
Anamari, we're always eager to know what's new and exciting at the UW from your perspective. I understand that you are recently back from Spain to visit the UW's Leon Center and that you received an award.
Well, I actually received an award mostly for the University of Washington, less for me, but it was really kind of interesting. I've been there a number of times. It's a smallish city with a very big history because it was actually a center for gold trading during the Roman Empire, and then it's on the Santiago Path. So even though it's a relatively small city, it has one of Gaudi's earliest buildings, and it's got one of the most important Gothic cathedrals, quite frankly, in the world. But what I didn't realize about it, it is actually, according to UNESCO, the cradle of parliamentary democracy. They had the very first parliament 25 years before the Magna Carta, and UNESCO says this. And so, for example, more than 800 years ago, King Alfred at the time started a parliament and gave people their rights. Amongst the rights that they had was that the king could not declare war without agreement from the parliament. That was a big deal in those days. And that also that regular citizens could go to the parliament and argue against a ruling by the king. And so what they do is they read these 22 rights, and I got a prize, the Greta Award, and it was largely because of the University of Washington's work in building global citizens that are dedicated to democratic processes. And I think it's really important that, in our study abroad programs, that it really is about global citizenship. And it's also wonderful. I mean, we also went to Madrid. One of the people who was with us on this adventure, so to speak, was Lilian Ortiz, who is the representative, the Washington State representative, who is the head of the Latinx caucus here in Washington State. And in fact, she's the head of the the Latinx caucus for the entire U.S. And we were meeting with the secretary, the ex-secretary of Education, and the secretary of Commerce. And one of the things that's really interesting is that work that was done right here at the University of Washington by the Institute of Learning and Brain Sciences, Pat Kuhl and Andy Meltzoff, their work on bilingualism, which showed not only that it was a wonderful way of knowing another culture and interacting with other people, but that it rewired the brain and created cognitive flexibility and made you smarter. They did that work here, but it got proven by being part of, in Madrid, they made all their elementary schools bilingual. Based on that work, Lilian argued for a law that, a new, not law, but a new decree, whatever, from the Washington State Legislature that is now putting money into bilingual education programs here, and there are more schools that will be doing bilingual education. And that's something that it reminded me a bit of last year when I was in Kagoshima, Japan, watching a boat with a UW flag that was studying tectonic plates in Japan in order to do research here on our earthquakes. And it really is very interesting and something that I think that sometimes we forget, that often when we're doing research overseas, the work is important for things that are happening right here in Washington State. So it was one of those, experiences of being in another country and watching how the work done there by researchers here was coming back to help children in our state.
Just the global, the global reach of this university is just absolutely amazing. Staying on that theme, I believe you were involved in the publication of a new book of international scholarship. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, there's this fabulous conference that I've been this is, I guess, the second time I've participated. And it's called the GLEON Conference. And it brings together university presidents from really across the world. The bulk of them are European. GLEON is in Switzerland. But it also, there's 2 U.S. presidents. The other one is the president of UC Irvine, who's been going. They've got, from Africa, from Asia, et cetera. And the idea is really to come together and talk about and write about the role of universities in the world and what role we should play. And one of the things that's been, and the first book that was published was called Universities as the Fifth Power. And this new one is the role of universities in building resilient cultures. And I'm one of the key authors in terms of, it's a book of chapters, and I'm one of the key editors of those. And one of the things that we really have been talking about, which I think is so critical to work that we care about here, is the roles that universities have to play in terms of really making society better for the public good. Sometimes, and we know that right now, particularly around, all the divisiveness that we have in the world, there are some people who feel that universities should pull back, that it's our role to be neutral in one way or another, and that we shouldn't weigh into difficult political situations. And I really think that it's during these times when universities are most needed. And we do need to lead when it comes to building democratic societies for the public good.
So speaking of challenges, all over the country and this week, the Israel-Hamas war has made this a fraught time in higher education for students, faculty, and university leaders like you. What is the UW doing to ensure a safe, welcoming campus environment for all students while also upholding our values of free speech and academic inquiry?
There's no question. I can't think of a more difficult, fraught time in my career as an academic, and it goes back, from about 40 years. And it is a very difficult time because things are very polarized. And there are different ways in which it's a complex situation. And so there's no question about it. And I do think that at times it is difficult to balance free speech, which I believe in with all my heart, and I think it is absolutely critical that we uphold, because sometimes that free speech can, in fact, no question, be very difficult and for someone else to hear, and can, in fact, make them feel intimidated and afraid, et cetera. And so how do we balance that? I think that as a state university, there is no question that, we can't, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Like right now, what we're seeing is a lot of private universities, whether it's USC or Columbia or Harvard, closing their gates to the public so that they can't go in. We cannot do that. This is a public campus, and people are allowed to say things on this campus in the outdoor arenas that are very difficult to hear. We saw that not that long ago when we had folks like Patriot Prayer on this campus when our own students had an affirmative action bake sale. And believe me, that was not. That was, people, you may remember we had students doing Build a Wall. I mean, we have seen some very difficult times. And so part of what we want to do, and I want to very much thank the Jackson School and the College of Arts and Sciences for their leadership in that, is provide students the tools to analyze and come up with their own conclusions in terms of how do we work through this. And the Jackson School did a fabulous job of providing a series of lectures that included people with a whole range of perspectives that I think, and that students could either go to, or faculty or the public could either go to in person, or folks who really weren't ready to have these discussions in person could see them online. And I think that that was fabulous. It doesn't mean that we all came to consensus. There's no question, there's a humanitarian crisis that's going on, and it is very, very difficult for us to watch. You know, people have very, very strong feelings. Now, having said that, you can have a range of opinions. You can practice free speech even when it's difficult, but you can't harass individuals. And we have seen some actions, including in our own hub, that went beyond the pale of free speech. Free speech doesn't include destruction of property. And so we are trying to make clear that speech, that we will back free speech 100%, but that there also are limits.
Yes, yes, indeed. So let's take it from the globe to the state of Washington. And admissions offers have gone out. Decision day is coming up. How are you feeling about the UW admissions this year in terms of student capacity?
Well, first of all, we are going to have a tremendous class. I mean, it was so much fun being at admitted preview day and seeing, you know, these young people that were so, I mean, a lot of them already knew that they were coming. They weren't just coming to preview. They were wearing their T-shirts, and their parents were wearing their W's. And then there were some who were kind of, you know, okay, I'm, you know, gotten to a number of other schools, and is this the right one for me? And you could see them leaning more and more, yeah. It was just so much fun to meet these students and their parents and, you know, feel their excitement, et cetera. You know, as I think, you know, Randy said, as Mary talked about, it's also hard. We have some great students that we can't admit. And, you know, we are unquestionably going to see what we can do to stretch, to see if we can take even more students, particularly with a focus on in-state students. But I also want to be clear. Every other university in the state is under-enrolled. And that creates some tensions as well, and that we are never going to be able to take every student that can do well here. But we want to take more. There is no question about it. Because I think that, as Randy pointed out, some of these great students, it's not as simple as if they don't go here, they'll go to another in-state school. Many of them have decided if they don't come here, they're going out of town, out of the state. And we saw that as I was talking to a number of the students. They weren't so much deciding between us and another university in the state. They were deciding between us and another university in another state. And once they leave, it is much harder to bring them back. And we'd like to keep that talent in state. So we do want to stretch so that these students can come here. But I also want to be clear that we can never, we just, you know, unless we just want to be just the University of Washington, we're never going to be able to take all of those students. But we really are, I mean, I think it's a testament to the incredible work of, you saw some of our fabulous students today and some of our fabulous faculty. It's a real testament to them. This has become a really hot school.
Let's move to athletics. So, can you tell us?
She's going from really good to complicated to good to complicated.
There's never a dull moment. Can you tell us what's been happening behind the scenes with staffing and what you're excited about as we prepare for the
Actually,
Big Ten?
athletics is on fire in a really positive way. So it's a positive story, but it also has been, you know, I mean, we have had to, you know, I mean, I really do believe that, you know, part of our job is to learn how to adapt. I mean, this is a complicated world, and we're constantly, I've never adapted to so many things so quickly in my entire life. But, you know, the good news is, you know, we were just talking about our new head football coach, Jed Fish, who's just really, I mean, some of you, he's opened up spring games, and so it's really fun. You can see the new players, and be much more involved, and he is absolutely terrific. And then we also have a sprinkle. So we have a fish and a sprinkle. I mean, how much better for the Pacific Northwest, you know? I mean, the water theme is great, and we have a great basketball coach. You know, he's here, and he's also really building a very strong team. And we have a fabulous athletic director. Pat Chun is absolutely terrific, and he is really working to, you know, pull together folks in athletics. They've seen a lot of changes, and that can be very difficult for morale, but we could not be in a better spot. And entering the Big Ten is really incredibly exciting. You know, these are almost all large public first-class universities. And so we have a number of partnerships that go beyond athletics. There's a cancer research network. There's an academic research network, so that rather than just talking about sports, which really was, the Pac-12 was, you know, and I'm sorry that, you know, we couldn't keep it together, but the truth is that all we did was athletics because we didn't have enough other things in common. Here, we really talk about much more than athletics. The other thing that's really interesting is, you've heard me say this before, I go to Asia and I'm a rock star. I go to the East Coast and they say, oh, which Washington? Actually, being, you know, the combination of the CFP and being in the Big Ten, all of a sudden people on the East Coast know who we are. And that is not a bad thing in terms of research partnerships, in terms of graduate students, et cetera. It really is bringing a visibility. I think it's going to be amazing for the city because those folks travel to games. Mm-hmm. And when they travel to games, they're going to stay here a few nights. It's not just driving up and driving, and it will help to revitalize downtown. I have no question that this is going to be a really positive thing, not just for us and our student athletes, but also for our city and our state. It's going to put us on the big screen, and between the Big Ten and the SEC, there is no question who is going to be shaping the future of athletics. And as I tell students all the time, you're either at the table or you're lunch. We are at the table.
Yes, yes. I like that. Last question. Clearly, this is a very busy and turbulent time for the UW. If you could take a step back from current events, what are you focused on in terms of longer-term strategic priorities?
Well, if you could take a step back, I'm not sure that that's possible, but I will say that, you know, look, change is hard. There is absolutely no question about it, and I'm surprised I have any hair left because I've been pulling it hard. No question about it. But also, times of change and times of turbulence is when you can make a difference. And I really think that what's exciting to me is the way that our deans and our provosts are really pulling together to look at how we can use this really big, complicated, comprehensive university to tackle those problems in the world. How can we really do interdisciplinary research and break down those silos? Because the thing about these problems is they're complicated. It's not just going to be one school or college that is going to be dealing with it. And it's really exciting for me to see people coming to the table with a sense of urgency, because we need that sense of urgency, because there really is that sense of we've got to make a difference and we've got to make things quick because we can't let things continue as they are. And I'm all there, and I am really excited about the future. I think this is going to be a time that we're going to look back at this period probably 10 or 15 years from now and say that it was a game changer and that the UW led.
Anna-Mari, whenever I am around you, your passion, it's just so inspirational. I love it.
I get it
I
from
love
you.
It. Okay, thank you. Do we still have time for questions from the audience? Is that a yes? All right, we have 5 minutes. Questions from the audience.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about the challenges that UW Medicine faces. I touched on it in my remarks, but it's something that you live with every day. And when people ask you about big long-term challenges, that one comes to mind.
Well, I think that, I mean, the bottom line is that we need the state to invest more in UW Medicine. One thing that we learned from the pandemic, again, it's an example of how something bad can be a very positive learning experience, is that the health of anybody can become the health of everybody. And we can't leave that when we have people that are sick, we have to treat them regardless of whether they can afford it or whether they can pay for it or not. And the University of Washington does the bulk of the uncompensated care for this entire region. And we're talking about something like $700 million worth of uncompensated care. And we really need the state to help us in that mission, because if we leave these people sick, believe me, it will end up affecting all of us in a whole range of ways. I think that sometimes people don't realize just the expanse of not just our medical school training, but of the actual practice that we do. One of the areas that we're really working on right now is mental health. There's a mental health crisis in this country, and there aren't enough providers, and we're working across the university to try and do that kind of provision. The other thing right now that's affecting UW Medicine is that, as you know, there are some states that are not providing certain kinds of care, and people are coming into our state, and it's really important that we provide that kind of care. And I'll just be honest, our hospitals are stressed. There is no question that our hospitals are stressed. We have been able to get by in part because there has been COVID aid, and our state, and I want to really thank our state, has really 2 years in a row come up and given us this last legislative session, it was $65 million, but it's all been one-time money. And we really need to find a way to have this not just be a one-off, but to have this be a continuing investment in making the health of all our citizens better.
Anamari, you just talked about healthcare, and it seems like one of the important aspects of that is just the data underneath, understanding the data. But I want to go for a very pragmatic thought that's impacted, I think, largely by climate and climate change. Insurance, insurance companies are pulling out of Florida and pulling out of California, and that's sort of unsustainable because, obviously people have to have insurance for their homes, and so I'm just. It seems like there's the answer is probably going to have to be in more data, better data to begin to allow underwriting, if you will. But I'm interested in your thoughts around this area.
Well, I think that, what you're pointing out, Ken, is partly why it's so important that we are doing these university initiatives that's bringing everyone together. Because, as you say, these aren't isolated. Climate issues are leading to health issues, very major health issues. And if we start looking at where climate change is coming, we can start predicting. And it's also leading to real issues in terms of crops and food and hunger. And as we know, war creates also humanitarian, so all of these things are related to each other. I am very concerned. I do think that there is a role. I don't think that the state, and by that I mean the state or the U.S. government, is the answer to everything. But it's very concerning when you start seeing private companies just pulling out because, hey, all of a sudden we're not making money on insurance, we're losing money. I thought that was kind of the deal. And so I do think that the government is going to have to step up because you can't have large number of folks being uninsured. But we may also have to, and here I'm just speculating, believe me, I'm not an expert in these areas, but we may also have to think about, should the government be helping people rebuild in some areas that, quite frankly, living is no longer sustainable? And, we do see people, living, on areas that flood, routinely, rebuilding. So, I think that we need some really good minds, much smarter than me, at the table trying to figure this out.
Okay.
And that's what our university does so well, is we really can bring great minds to the table who can actually use data to come up with solutions that are based on the public good, not just on who's making a profit. And I'm excited. I am so excited to be part of all this. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our Insider's Corner. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Anamari. Kent, back to you.
I want to echo Anamari's last comment. I have a lot of hope and faith that there are great answers at great institutions, and certainly this is one of the great institutions. So thanks to all the presenters today. Last year, we brought back the tradition of the annual board dinner. So I look forward to meeting many of you, if not all of you, upstairs in the South Ballroom momentarily. Our student presenters and researchers are waiting to greet you. They'll be there and are excited to talk about the impact of climate on human health and the environment, and maybe some of the other issues that Anamari just mentioned. So please keep your name badges on, and let's head up there. And we are officially adjourned until October 3rd of 2024.